In case you somehow missed it, Yamaha has announced the release of the R9, their sportier version of the triple CP3 engine, which we know and love from the MT09 and the Tracer and the XSR 900. I'm not even kidding, this might be the most hyped motorcycle I have ever seen. I've been seeing local dealerships with ads to come and look at the R9, not test ride it, look at it on display. Like this is a Shen Yun concert coming to town for one weekend only. People are divisively split over whether they think this is going to be a great motorcycle or a terrible follow-up to the R6. As the owner of a 2022 MT09 SP myself, someone who loves the bike, loves the engine, I feel like I should chime in with a few things that you may or may not have thought about with this platform. Let's start with the pros of the bike. The engine has to be front and center. The CP3 Triple is just a great engine, making 107 horsepower and 63 foot-pounds of torque at the wheel. Now, everyone wants to compare these to 600cc sport bikes. 600cc bikes have very similar horsepower, around 105 horsepower usually, but the torque is way down, usually around 45 foot-pounds of torque. But the biggest difference there is the red line. So on the MT09, the red line is around 10,500 RPM. The big difference between that and the 600cc is the 600cc would redline way up around 16,000 RPMs. It creates a whole different riding style. So obviously when you're on the street, you want that low down torque. You don't want to have to rev it out all the time to get to any power off the line. But when you're on the track, it's a whole different situation. You love that high revving engine because you're usually staying way up near the red line. So it really comes down to where are you riding it? What does your local track look like? How are you going to be using this bike? Are you going to have a blast on the R9 on the track? Probably. But I will say, riding a motorcycle that tops out at 14,000, 15,000, 16,000 RPMs is just a whole different experience. And I'll say a four-cylinder, inline or V4, to me is a much more exciting motor than a three-cylinder. But let's touch on another huge benefit of this bike is it kind of takes over the 600cc class, adding an IMU and all the technology involved in that. So the closest we got was the CBR 600RR, got all of the updates in Japan and I believe Europe, but in the States we still get the same old CBR 600 as we've always had. There's no technology updates. So that's a huge shame. So this R9 really fills a void in the space, which is you just want a supersport style motorcycle with over 100 horsepower. This fills a huge void in that marketplace. I mean, there is the Ducati Panigale V2, but the price tag of over $18,000 puts it out of reach for a lot of people. So I think the exciting attributes of the R9 are the flat torque curve, the usability on the street, and the technology and all of the reliability that comes with a Japanese motorcycle like Yamaha puts out. One interesting point to me is the suspension. So on the MT09 SP, there is KYB up front and Öhlins in the rear. On the R9, they decided to go with KYB front and rear. I'm not sure the reason on that. I'm not sure if it's better or worse, but it is a change. The rest of the componentry, the Brembo brakes, all of the technology, it's going to be a great bike. It's going to sell like crazy. It'll be fun, but will it be a track weapon? I don't know. Personally, I would probably just stick with a used inline four-cylinder, 600cc or liter bike. But that's just what they were designed for, purpose-built. I mean, if you want the technology, you can go 1000cc. I know it's a whole different bike, but it's purpose-built. It's going to be insanely exciting. You could go with the CBR 1000 RR that's got like only 150 horsepower. So if you're worried about a 200 horsepower insane machine, that's fair. Everyone should be afraid of that much horsepower on a track, but I think you just get a lot for your money. I mean, you could get a CBR 1000 R since the remake 2017 and on for around 12, 13 grand. The same price as this bike. All of the technology, additional technology like Honda electronic steering damper, which is amazing. I think hopefully we can get something in the middle. I don't understand why the space between the R9 and the R1 or any of the leader bikes is a difference of 120 horsepower to 200 horsepower. I would like to see something around 140 horsepower. I don't know why that isn't really popular. I would like to see something around 400 pounds, around 140 horsepower, super sport dedicated that revs out to 14, 15,000 RPM. Is that too much to ask? Let me know in the comments. So to sum it up, on the street, I love this motorcycle. The thing I hate the most about my MT09 is going over 70 miles per hour. It's just battling the wind and I'm losing at all times. Once you get to the twisties and you're doing 50 miles an hour or whatever you're doing, it's perfectly fine. If you're on a track with a chicane or a go-kart track, perfectly fine. Love the high handlebars, lots of leverage. Anything over 70 is just pain. Naked bikes on the highway are not fun. So this bike will sell like crazy for street purposes. Also, really, when you can do a quarter mile on this bike in probably 11 seconds, and a super bike might shave off a second off of that. I mean, do you need that extra power? On the track, it's the opposite. You don't need all of that power unless you are an advanced rider or a professional rider. Really, you just want light weights and a fun engine, so high revving. So for me, I'd probably prefer on the track, I haven't rode it yet, a Kawasaki ZX4 RR because that revs out to an insane amount. But with the announcement that this bike will be a World SSP bike replacing the R6, there may be a lot more trickle-down technology that comes with that. We might get access to a lot of aftermarket parts, a lot of upgrades. Might be a great thing. One thing's for sure, you're going to be hearing a lot more about this bike as it comes to release and after it's released. And I think that's a good thing. I think it'll push the other manufacturers to enter this space. Let me know in the comments.